If you just glance at the scoreboard reading 1-6 and 4-6 at the Stuttgart Open, you might think this was just a light walk in the park for Leylah Fernandez. But you are wrong. This match is not just a defeat. It is the moment the entire tennis world has to bow down to the fighting spirit of the Philippines. Let us look closer at that exact scoreline. 1-6, 4-6. A straight sets loss. On paper, it looks like a complete blowout. It looks like a young, inexperienced player got completely overwhelmed and dismantled on the red clay courts of Germany. The media usually ignores these early round exits. Casual fans usually turn off their televisions and wait for the quarterfinals. Yet right after the final point was played in this specific match, the reaction from the absolute elite of the sport told a completely different and shocking story. The noise was deafening. Rafael Nadal immediately took out his phone and praised her absolute warrior mentality. He called her resilience a massive inspiration for the next generation of athletes. Kim Clijsters went straight onto her podcast and compared the cultural impact of this young woman to Michael Jordan. Even the winner of the match, Leylah Fernandez, stood at the net during the post-match interview and called the progression of her opponent absolutely incredible. She openly admitted that the speed and defense she just faced on that clay was a nightmare to play against. Why does a straight sets loss make the greatest players in tennis history react like this? Why are seasoned analysts calling a defeated 20-year-old the most dangerous rising star in the entire WTA organization? It simply does not make sense. A loss is supposed to be a loss. You pack your bags and you go home. But to understand why this specific defeat carries the exact same weight as a Grand Slam championship trophy, we have to rewind the clock to the very beginning. Professional tennis is never a fairy tale. When you come from a Southeast Asian country, you are not just fighting the opponent on the other side of the net. You are fighting every single stereotype and structural barrier of the sports establishment. The WTA Tour is a brutal landscape, heavily dominated by European and American powerhouses. Growing up in the Philippines means you do not have the exact same access to world-class clay courts. You do not have an army of elite sparring partners waiting down the street. You do not have the endless financial resources and massive federation backing that a kid training in Florida or Paris might automatically receive. You are playing a completely different and much harder game from day one. You are considered smaller. You are heavily underfunded. You are entirely off the radar for the major talent scouts. But Alex Eala did not care about the radar or the statistics. She simply put her head down and went to absolute war. She carried the immense pressure of an entire proud nation on her shoulders every single time she laced up her shoes. Think deeply about what Kim Clijsters said regarding the Michael Jordan comparison. Imagine being a teenager and carrying the heavy athletic hopes of over 100 million people. Every time you step onto a court anywhere in the world, the Filipino diaspora shows up. They wave the flag. They scream your name. They expect greatness. Most young players would completely crumble under that kind of suffocating national obsession. They would fold under the blinding spotlight. Ella instead used that massive energy as rocket fuel. She grinded her way up the junior ranks, won major junior titles, and forced the elitist tennis world to finally learn how to pronounce her name. But the transition from a junior phenom to the main professional tour is where beautiful dreams usually go to die. The grown women on the main tour hit the ball significantly harder. The baseline rallies last much longer. The mental warfare is absolutely relentless and unforgiving. By the time the spring of 2026 rolled around, she had finally pushed her way into the big leagues. She officially arrived at the Porsche Tennis Grand Prix in Stuttgart. This tournament is infamous for its ultra-competitive draws. The preparation for this match was intense. Every sports outlet expected a quick and painful execution. The German fans filled the arena expecting to see a masterclass from an established star. This was the defining moment for Eala to prove she truly belonged on the exact same dirt as the absolute giants of the game. She brought that fierce Filipino warrior spirit to the pristine German clay. She was ready to show the entire world what true resilience looks like against a former US Open finalist. But the harsh reality of elite professional tennis was waiting to deliver a truly crushing blow. Leylah Fernandez was waiting on the other side of the net. Fernandez is a tactical genius on dirt. She knows exactly how to expose the slightest weakness in a younger player, and the brutal reality check was about to hit the pride of the Philippines much harder than anyone in that stadium could have ever predicted. If you have ever felt like the ultimate underdog in your own life, if you have ever faced a challenge where everyone in the room expected you to completely fail, you need to stick around for the rest of this story. Join our community by subscribing right now, because the way this young woman responds to absolute disaster on that clay court defies all logic and will change the way you look at failure forever. And when she walked out for that first set, the true nightmare immediately began. Set 1 at Stuttgart is not a normal tennis match. It is a complete and utter tactical massacre. Leylah Fernandez steps onto the red clay and immediately turns the court into a geometry puzzle that Alex Eala simply cannot solve. The Canadian plays with an aggressive, taking the ball early style that robs you of your most precious resource on a professional tennis court: time. Every heavy topspin forehand pushes Eala further and further behind the baseline. Every perfectly executed drop shot drags her gasping for air up to the net. The scoreline of 1-6 flashes on the giant stadium board like a massive neon sign of failure. It feels completely suffocating. You can actually see the heavy psychological weight crushing down on the 20-year-old from the Philippines. She looks at her strings. She looks at her coaching box. Nothing is working. The brutal reality of elite clay court tennis is stripping away every weapon she has built over the last few years. The ball is bouncing too high. The rallies are lasting too long. The physical toll of chasing down relentless corner-to-corner attacks is draining the life out of her legs. Clay is not like hard court or grass. It is a living, breathing surface that demands absolute perfection in your footwork. You have to slide into your shots. You have to build points with extreme patience. Fernandez is a master of this dark art. She uses her experience to completely neutralize the raw power Eala tries to bring to the table. Every time Eala tries to hit a clean winner, the slow dirt absorbs the pace, and the ball comes floating right back. It is maddening. It is the kind of tennis that breaks young players mentally before it ever breaks them physically. You swing as hard as you can, and your opponent just resets the point with a casual flick of the wrist. The frustration mounts with every single unforced error. The gap between a rising prospect and a seasoned tour veteran becomes painfully obvious to everyone watching in the stands. Before we even get to the comeback, you have to understand the sheer physical agony of what Fernandez was doing to her. Tennis at this level is a game of microscopic margins. If your footwork is late by a fraction of a second, the ball flies into the net. Fernandez was hitting the ball with such aggressive intent that Eala was constantly lunging, stretching, and hitting off balance. Her lungs were burning. Her legs felt like they were made of concrete. Every time she looked across the net, Fernandez looked completely fresh, bouncing lightly on her toes, ready to inflict more punishment. The tactical problem seemed entirely unsolvable. Eala tried hitting high, heavy balls to slow the pace. Fernandez simply stepped in and took them out of the air. Eala tried hitting flat and hard. Fernandez used the pace to redirect the ball into the open court. It was a suffocating masterclass in court geometry. The crowd could feel the helplessness. The commentators noted how quiet Eala had become. The usual fiery energy, the trademark fist pumps, they were all gone. She was drowning in the deep end of the WTA pool. The scoreline was a brutal reflection of this reality. Then we reached the defining moment of absolute despair. We are deep into the second set. The scoreboard shows 2-5. Fernandez is standing at the baseline with yellow tennis balls in her hand. She is serving for the match. The stadium is quiet. The casual fans are already checking their phones and looking for the exits. The commentators are already preparing their post-match summary speeches about how the young Filipina star still has a lot to learn about European clay. Hope is entirely dead in that arena. The match is functionally over. When you are down 1-6 and 2-5 against a Grand Slam finalist, the mental math is brutal. Your brain tells you to just swing wildly, miss the next few shots, shake hands at the net, and catch the next flight out of Germany. The locker room is calling. A hot shower and a chance to forget this nightmare are just 4 points away. The pressure is a physical weight now. It is pressing against her chest. Every camera lens is zoomed in on her face, waiting for the inevitable crack, waiting for the tears of frustration that usually accompany a blowout loss on the big stage. This is the exact crucible where careers are either forged in fire or shattered into dust. At a score of 2 to 5 inches, the second set, when Fernandez holds the ball to end the match, 99% of young players will drop their rackets and accept their fate. But Alex Eala belongs to the remaining 1%. They often say you cannot judge the true greatness of a champion when they are leading the match. You only see their absolute raw character when the opponent has match point. Fernandez tosses the ball into the German sky. She hits a heavy serve directly to the backhand. The Canadian steps inside the baseline, racket raised, ready to hit the final put-away winner. The match is supposed to end right here, but Eala refuses to miss. She lunges violently to her left. She digs out a brutal low-bouncing ball and sends it deep into the corner. The crowd gasps. Fernandez is forced back. Eala steps up and rips a passing shot. She saves the first match point. Then, in a display of pure defiance, she saves the second one. Suddenly, the suffocating tactical massacre stops. Eala breaks the Fernandez serve. The score becomes 3 to 5. A strange, electric murmur ripples through the German crowd. Wait, is she actually fighting back? She holds her own serve with a terrifying new level of aggression. The score becomes 4 to 5. The dynamic of the entire arena completely flips upside down in the span of a few chaotic minutes. This is where we need to look at the visual breakdown of what actually happens on that court to cause such a massive momentum shift. Eala stops playing defensive survival tennis. She flips a switch in her brain. Her lefty forehand suddenly transforms into an absolute weapon of mass destruction. She starts hitting the ball on the rise, refusing to be pushed behind the baseline anymore. She dictates the cross-court rallies. The very same heavy topspin that Fernandez used to torture her in the first set is now coming right back at the Canadian with pure venom. Eala is hitting with so much depth and angle that she pushes the veteran completely out of the television frame. The relentless defense turns into blinding offense. She is tracking down impossible drop shots, sliding perfectly into the dirt, and flicking angles that defy the laws of physics. She is hitting passing shots on the dead run that leave the commentators absolutely speechless. Leylah Fernandez looks across the net and suddenly realizes she is no longer playing a scared rookie. She is fighting a cornered tiger who absolutely refuses to die. The speed of her racket head is a blur. The heavy thud of the ball exploding off her strings echoes loudly in the arena. Every single point she wins feels like a heavy punch landing flush on the jaw of the tennis establishment. This sudden explosion of form was not just random luck. It was a calculated, brilliant adaptation born out of pure desperation. Eala realized that playing safe was a guaranteed death sentence. So she threw the tactical playbook out the window and started playing on pure instinct. Her footwork, which looked so heavy just 10 minutes ago, suddenly became light and explosive. She started anticipating the drop shots before Fernandez even hit them. She began reading the serve, stepping into the court, and returning with terrifying pace. The heavy topspin forehand, her signature weapon, finally found its range. She pushed Fernandez deep into the backhand corner, forcing the Canadian to slice the ball back, which gave Eala the short ball she needed to dictate the point. It was a masterclass in aggressive clay court tennis, executed flawlessly under the most extreme pressure imaginable. The crowd could not believe what they were watching. A girl who was completely dominated for an hour was suddenly bullying a Grand Slam finalist around the court. The sheer audacity of her shot-making was breathtaking. She was hitting winners off of balls that most players would just try to block back. She was not just trying to survive the match anymore. She was trying to win it. What is your favorite comeback moment in sports history? Drop into the comments right now and tell me which athlete you think possesses the most unbreakable fighting spirit, because watching this 20-year-old girl refuse to quit against a giant of the game is giving me absolute chills. The energy inside the Porsche arena spikes to an unbelievable, deafening level. The Filipino fans in the stands are screaming their lungs out, waving their flags with frantic, chaotic joy. The neutral German fans, who usually clap politely, are now on their feet roaring for every single point. For 20 insane minutes, Alex Eala takes total control of a match she had already mathematically lost. She shows the world a level of mental toughness that you simply cannot teach in any elite tennis academy. You are either born with that kind of fire in your blood, or you are not. Eala proves that her lefty game is not just good for dominating the junior circuit, it is highly disruptive and dangerous to the absolute top tier of the WTA Tour. The heavy spin she generates, the insane lungs-burning court coverage, the sheer, unadulterated audacity to hit screaming winners down the line when you are facing multiple match points. She pushes a top 25 player to the absolute edge of a total mental breakdown. She creates a vivid blueprint for how to survive and counterattack on the most physically demanding surface in the entire sport. She proves that the heart of a champion beats the loudest when the silence of defeat is looming. Every cross-court winner is a statement. Every saved point is a loud declaration that she belongs in this exact stadium, fighting against these exact legends. The fear is completely gone from her eyes, replaced by a cold, calculating intensity that terrifies her opponents. She is dragging Leylah Fernandez into a physical dogfight, making her bleed for every single inch of that red clay. Even though the final miracle does not completely materialize in the 10th game, that crazy, relentless pushback forces the absolute elite of the tennis world to permanently break their silence. You know you have just achieved something truly great when even the greatest players in the history of the sport have to get on the internet to defend your name. The match officially ended with a 4-6 loss in that second set. The umpire called the score. The players shook hands at the net, but the narrative in the global media completely flipped overnight. International sports newspapers and giant networks like ESPN immediately started calling her the ultimate rising star of the WTA Tour. The reaction was not just polite applause for a good effort. It was a massive wave of validation from the absolute elite gods of tennis. Andrei Rublev saw some random social media criticism regarding her performance and immediately shut it down. The top male player publicly defended her honor. He called her the greatest player in Philippine history and demanded absolute respect for her journey. Then Jessica Pegula, the current world number 5, stepped up to the microphone. She called Eala the perfect role model for professional tennis. She highlighted how incredibly well this 20-year-old handles the suffocating pressure of global fame with such extreme grace and maturity. But the most powerful validation came from the ultimate king of clay himself. Rafael Nadal watched his academy student fight for her life on that German dirt. He did not offer any pity. He offered massive respect. He praised her absolute refusal to give up. He told the entire world that what she experienced on that court was simply a necessary part of the brutal process of growing up in this sport. You have to understand the true weight of these public statements. Legends like Rafael Nadal and Kim Clijsters do not just hand out free compliments to make a losing player feel better. They do not care about participation trophies. When they speak, they are speaking from a place of supreme analytical authority. They know exactly what it takes to win multiple major titles. They look at Alex Eala and they do not see a cute underdog story. They see a terrifying future threat to the entire top 10 rankings. They see a girl who possesses the exact same psychotic competitive drive that they have in their own blood. This kind of praise is the absolute highest currency in professional tennis. It is the gold standard of validation. When your peers and your absolute idols look at your defeat and call it a masterpiece of resilience, you have officially arrived on the main stage. The locker room dynamics permanently shift after a match like this. The next time Eala walks into a major tournament, the top seeds will not look at her as a simple warm-up match. They will look at her as a highly dangerous trap. They watched the tape of those final 20 minutes in Stuttgart. They saw the heavy lefty topspin. They saw the blinding footwork. They saw a young player who becomes exponentially more dangerous when her back is pushed firmly against the wall. They know that if they fail to close her out quickly, she will turn the match into a grueling physical nightmare. Alex Eala might have left Stuttgart without a shiny silver trophy in her hands, but the specific message she brought back home is far more terrifying for the rest of the WTA Tour. Greatness rarely begins with easy winning streaks. It is always forged through the ruthless fire of failure. What happened in Germany was not a sports tragedy. It was a massive tactical evolution. Nadal called these exact moments growing pains for a very specific reason. Every single time she loses a heartbreaking match against an experienced veteran, she absorbs their tactical knowledge like a sponge. She is taking the brutal lessons of the European clay and using them to construct an unbreakable mental fortress. But this story is so much bigger than just one player figuring out how to slide on dirt. Alex Eala is actively redefining the entire landscape of Southeast Asian tennis. She is setting a completely new standard for what is possible when raw talent meets absolute relentless dedication. She is showing millions of kids back home that they do not need to be born in Florida or Spain to terrify the elite establishment of a global sport. They just need the absolute courage to step onto the court and refuse to lose without starting a war. And if you have stayed with me this far into the breakdown, I want to share a highly advanced statistic that the mainstream television broadcasts completely ignore. If you look at the raw data for breakpoint and matchpoint save percentages for female players under the age of 21, Eala is currently posting numbers that equal or completely surpass some of the greatest legends of the game at that exact same age. She is quite literally statistically built for high-pressure survival. She wins the exact points that completely break the minds of normal tennis players. This specific analytical metric is the #1 ultimate indicator of future major champions. The data strongly suggests we are looking at a serious title contender within the next 2 years. Her ability to elevate her heart rate and execute perfect baseline strikes while facing match point is something you simply cannot teach. You either have that ice in your veins or you do not. And the numbers prove that she has it in absolute abundance. The tennis world has been officially warned by the data and by the legends. Eala has completely captured the hearts of the global fan base. She has proven that she can trade heavy blows with Grand Slam finalists on their favorite surfaces. The only real question left right now is exactly when she will finally hoist one of the 4 biggest trophies in the sport. Do you want to be right here when she finally shocks the world and breaks the ultimate glass ceiling? Subscribe to the channel right now, so you do not miss our next breakdown of her historic march to a major championship title.